Look, I never thought I'd be typing this. Never thought my biggest ethical crisis wouldn't involve embezzlement or insider trading, or even catching my boss with an intern in the supply closet, though honestly, that wouldn't have surprised me much either. No, my line in the sand, the moment my carefully constructed corporate apathy finally shattered like cheap glass, involved a dead man, specifically stealing a dead man, and the truly messed up part? For about 3 heart-stopping, gut-churning minutes, I actually considered doing it. My name's Alex, and until last Tuesday, I was just another cog in the gleaming soul-sucking machine of Viridian Dynamics. Mid-level project manager in the legacy client retention and asset optimization division. Corporate speak so dense it probably has its own gravitational pull. My job? Basically, convince companies clinging to outdated Viridian software that it was still worth their exorbitant annual fees, even as the world moved on to shinier, cheaper, more efficient platforms. It was soul-crushing, but the paycheck was adequate. Enough to cover my cramped apartment, my perpetually stressed-out rescue cat, Mr. Whiskers, who judges me constantly, and the occasional overpriced craft beer that tasted faintly of regret. My boss, Silas Thorne, was, well, Silas. Picture a man carved from granite and bad intentions, polished to a high sheen by decades of schmoozing and backstabbing his way up the Viridian ladder. Late 50s, perpetually tanned, suspiciously so for someone who lived in a windowless office overlooking a parking garage, with eyes the color of cold slate and a smile that never quite reached them. He spoke in smooth, calculated tones that could make a request for a coffee refill sound like a strategic maneuver. He'd taken an interest in me. Not the creepy kind, I think, but the kind where he saw me as useful. Quiet, competent, didn't ask too many questions, and crucially didn't have a powerful union or a fancy degree backing me up. I was replaceable, which made me in Silas's world perfectly controllable. The rot started subtly, as it always does. A slightly inflated expense report he asked me to approve for client entertainment that suspiciously matched his wife's favorite spa weekend. A confidential internal audit finding he accidentally left open on his screen when I walked in, detailing significant vulnerabilities in the very software I was selling as robust and secure. I learned to avert my eyes, to nod, to file it away under not my problem. Survival, right? Keep your head down, cash the check, go home to Mr. Whisker's silent disapproval. Then came the Henderson account, Henderson Manufacturing, a family-run business for 3 generations based in a Rust Belt town that time forgot. They'd been using Viridian's Synergy Suite since the dial-up era. It was clunky, outdated, and frankly a security nightmare, but old man Henderson, Arthur they called him, was loyal to a fault. He'd shaken hands with the Viridian founder back in the day, and that handshake in his mind was a blood oath. Silas saw Henderson not as a loyal customer, but as a ticking time bomb. They were hemorrhaging money. Their main competitor, a leaner, tech-savvy outfit, was circling. If Henderson went under, Viridian lost a steady, if small, revenue stream. Worse, Arthur Henderson was famously litigious. If he discovered just how vulnerable Synergy Suite was, vulnerabilities Viridian had known about for years but deemed low priority for legacy clients, he could sue them into next Tuesday. Reputational damage? Catastrophic. Silas called me into his office that Tuesday morning. Not unusual, but the air felt different. Thick, charged, like before a storm. He wasn't behind his desk. He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, back to me, staring out at the gray expanse of the parking garage. The usual hum of the building's HVAC seemed louder, more oppressive. "Alex," he said, his voice low, devoid of its usual practiced smoothness. It was flat, dangerous. "Sit down." I did. The leather chair felt suddenly cold. "Arthur Henderson," he began, still not turning. "He had a stroke. Last night. Critical condition at St. Mary's." My stomach dipped. Arthur Henderson, the guy who sent handwritten thank you notes at Christmas, who once sent me a box of his wife's famous fudge because I'd helped resolve a minor billing glitch quickly. "Oh God, is he—" "Unlikely," Silas cut in, finally swiveling around. His face was grim, carved from that same cold stone. "Doctors say it's a matter of hours, maybe a day. His son, Michael, is on his way from California, but he's not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed, and he hates us, thinks we're bleeding his father dry." He paused, letting the implication hang. My mind raced. Henderson goes under, Silas loses the account and faces potential lawsuits, standard corporate damage control, layoffs maybe. But Silas looked desperate, more than desperate, panicked. That was new. "The problem, Alex," he continued, stepping closer, his eyes locking onto mine with unnerving intensity, "is Arthur's signature on the original Synergy Suite master agreement and the subsequent amendments, all physical, all locked in that damn antique desk in his office at the factory." I frowned. "The agreement? But it's electronic, isn't it? We have digital copies." Silas let out a short, humorless bark of laughter. "Digital copies. Alex, please." Henderson insisted on wet ink. Insisted. And those physical copies, they contain clauses. Specific clauses. Viridian quietly added during the last renewal 5 years ago clauses that, well, let's just say they absolve us of any liability related to system vulnerabilities or data breaches for the duration of the contract. Forever, essentially, as long as the contract is active. Ice water flooded my veins. You mean you buried liability waivers in the physical contract, clauses Henderson never knew about? Silas's gaze didn't waver. Standard practice for high-risk legacy clients, necessary risk mitigation. The point is, Alex, those physical documents are the only legally binding proof of those clauses. Our internal digital records, they're sanitized. They show the base agreement, nothing more. If Arthur dies and Michael finds those physical copies, he didn't need to finish. Michael, grieving and angry, finds clauses that essentially say Viridian can let Henderson's systems get hacked into oblivion and they're off the hook. He'd sue. He'd go public. He'd burn Viridian to the ground. So, what do we do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The air felt thin. Silas leaned forward, placing his palms flat on the desk, his knuckles white. We retrieve the documents, Alex, before Michael gets here, before the lawyers descend, before anyone knows they exist. Retrieve? The word tasted like ash. Silas, the factory's locked down, security's probably tight, especially with Arthur in the hospital, and his office. It's like a vault. Mrs. Henderson has the key. Mrs. Henderson? Silas said, a flicker of something cold in his eyes. Is it St. Mary's, holding her husband's hand, grieving? She won't be thinking about some old papers in a desk. He paused, letting the implications sink in. And the factory security? Well, let's just say Mr. Henderson's nephew, Benny. Works nights. He's amenable for the right incentive. Viridian Health and Wellness Stipend, shall we call it. My blood ran cold. Benny. A quiet guy, always nodding hello. Silas had greased palms with him too? Of course he had. But breaking in, stealing company property? Silas, that's felony theft. And Arthur's property. Alex, Silas's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, his eyes boring into mine. Think bigger picture. Think about the hundreds of jobs here at Viridian that depend on accounts like Henderson's. Think about the reputational stability of this entire division. Think about your position. He let that hang, a not-so-veiled threat wrapped in corporate jargon. This isn't theft, Alex. It's asset preservation. It's preventing a catastrophic legal event that could ripple through the entire company. We're talking potential layoffs, Alex. Your layoff. Is that what you want? To explain to Mr. Whiskers why you can't afford his premium organic salmon pate anymore? He knew. He knew about the cat. He'd probably looked it up. The casual cruelty of it, using my dumb, judgmental cat against me, it was masterful. And it worked. A cold dread coiled in my gut, warring with a terrifying spark of possibility? Not the possibility of success, but the possibility of just doing it, of making the problem go away, of keeping my safe, dull, soul-crushing job. The path of least resistance, paved with stolen documents and a dying man's trust. Tonight, Silas said, straightening up, the dangerous intensity replaced by brisk finality. 9 p.m. Factory's deserted. Benny will disable the silent alarm on the west loading bay door. He'll leave it unlocked. You go in straight to Arthur's office. You know where it is. Bottom right drawer of the mahogany desk. Take everything in the manila folder. Burn it or shred it. I don't care. Just make it disappear. Consider it early retirement for problematic paperwork. He offered that cold, dead smile. You're a problem solver, Alex. That's why I chose you. Don't disappoint me. He turned back to the window, dismissing me. My legs felt like jelly as I walked out. The familiar hum of the office, keyboards clacking, phones ringing, the low murmur of meaningless meetings, felt alien, hostile. Every glance from a colleague felt like an accusation. Do you know what Alex is about to do? My mind screamed. You can't do this. It's monstrous. But the counter-arguments, Silas's arguments slithered in. Hundreds of jobs. Your job. Mr. Whiskers' pate. It's just paper. Arthur's dying anyway. Michael doesn't deserve it. He's been neglecting the business for years. I spent the afternoon in a fugue state. I tried to work, but my eyes blurred over spreadsheets. I jumped every time my phone buzzed. Was it Silas checking in? Was it St. Mary's? I Googled Henderson Manufacturing's address, the layout of the factory floor. Thank God for outdated Google Street View, the location of Arthur's office near the old executive wing. I researched document destruction. Fire was messy, unreliable, a heavy-duty shredder. But where? My tiny apartment? The thought of those papers, maybe containing Arthur's last unknowing signature on a contract that betrayed him, turning into confetti in my building's communal bin, it made me nauseous. I called Mrs. Henderson. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. A nurse answered, transferred me. Her voice was thin, raw, exhausted. Hello, Alex, from Viridian? Is there news? No, Mrs. Henderson, I stammered, guilt choking me. No news, just wanted to check in, see if there was anything we could do. The lie tasted like poison. Oh, Alex, that's That's kind, she whispered. He's not waking up. The doctors, they're not hopeful. A sob hitched in her throat. Michael's flight got delayed. He won't be here until tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning. The window was shrinking. Silas's plan hinged on tonight. Please, please tell Michael, we're thinking of you both, I managed, the words ash in my mouth. I hung up, tears pricking my eyes. Not just for Arthur, but for the sheer grotesque audacity of what Silas wanted me to do, stealing from a dying man's grieving widow. It wasn't just unethical. It felt sacrilegious. I tried arguing with Silas mentally. What if I get caught? Benny could sell me out in a heartbeat for a better offer. Security cameras, Benny might disable one alarm, but what about the internal ones? What if Arthur pulls through? Unlikely, but possible. Then I'd be caught red-handed with stolen documents. Felony charges, prison, ruined. What if Michael never finds the folder? Maybe it's buried under decades of invoices. Maybe he just liquidates everything without looking. But Silas wouldn't take that chance, and neither, the cowardly part of me whispered, could I. As 8 p.m. neared, the dread solidified into a lead weight in my chest. I stared at my reflection in the dark window of my apartment, pale, hollow-eyed. Mr. Whiskers wound around my ankles, purring, oblivious to the monster his human was contemplating becoming. I pulled on dark clothes, black jeans, a gray hoodie. Felt like a costume, a thief's costume. I grabbed a small empty backpack. My hands trembled as I zipped it. The drive to the Henderson factory was a blur of rain-slicked streets and my own frantic heartbeat thudding in my ears. The old brick building loomed out of the gloom, dark except for a single security light near the loading bay Silas mentioned. It looked abandoned, haunted. This is wrong. Turn around, drive away, quit, anything. But the image of Silas's cold eyes, the threat hanging over my job, over Mr. Whiskers, it held me captive. I parked a block away, my breath fogging the windshield, took deep, shuddering breaths that did nothing to calm the panic clawing up my throat. Just go in, get the folder, get out. Burn it, go back to your life. The lie I told myself felt flimsy, transparent. I walked the block, the rain misting my face, cold and cleansing, but unable to wash away the grime I felt accumulating on my soul, the west loading bay door. It was slightly ajar, just as Silas promised. No alarms blared. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I slipped inside. The smell hit me first, oil, metal, dust, and the faint, sweet decay of old paper and neglect. The vast factory floor stretched into darkness, silent machinery looming like sleeping giants. It was eerie, oppressive. My footsteps echoed too loudly in the silence. I fumbled for the flashlight on my phone, shielding the beam with my hand, the weak light cutting a pathetic swath through the gloom. Arthur's office. I remembered the way. Past the dormant assembly lines, down a corridor lined with closed doors to the end. His door was solid oak, slightly warped with age. The knob turned easily. Unlocked. Of course, why lock it in your own factory? Inside, it was exactly as I remembered. Wood paneling darkened with age, shelves crammed with ledgers and engineering manuals, a large scarred mahogany desk dominating the room. The air was still, thick with the scent of cigar smoke, Arthur's one vice, and old leather. On the desk amidst piles of paper sat a framed photo. Arthur, younger, arm around his wife, both smiling broadly at what looked like a company picnic decades ago. My stomach clenched, bottom right drawer. I knelt, my knees protesting against the hard floor. The drawer was stiff but gave with a groan. Inside were folders, neatly labeled, Henderson accounts payable, supplier contracts. Employee records, 1980s. And there, tucked towards the back, a simple manila folder. The label in Arthur's precise looping script, Synergy Suite Agreement, Viridian Dynamics, final. My hand hovered over it. This was it. The point of no return. I could just take it, shove it in the backpack, walk out, burn it in my sink like Silas wanted, never speak of it again, go back to my gray life. But I couldn't. Something stopped me. A memory. Arthur handing me that box of fudge, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Just a little thank you, son, for not treating an old dog like a nuisance. The sheer, unassuming decency of it. With trembling fingers, I opened the folder. Not to steal, to see, to understand the depth of the betrayal I was being asked to facilitate. The top document was the original agreement, signed over 20 years ago. Standard stuff. Then came the amendments, year after year, mostly routine. Price increases, minor scope changes. Then, 5 years ago, the renewal Silas mentioned. The language jumped out at me, even in the dim phone light. Clauses buried in dense legalese, but clear enough. Client hereby irrevocably waives any and all claims, past, present, or future, arising from or related to the functionality, security protocols, data integrity, or operational continuity of the Synergy Suite platform, its associated modules, or any integrated third-party services, For the duration of this agreement and any subsequent renewals, Viridian Dynamics shall bear no liability for any direct, indirect, incidental, consequential, or punitive damages resulting from system failures, data breaches, cyber attacks, or any other event impacting the client's use of the Synergy Suite platform. It was worse than I imagined. A blanket waiver. A get-out-of-jail-free card written in blood. Arthur's trust, signed unknowingly. My hands shook so badly the papers rustled. How could they? How could Viridian, how could Silas, do this to a man who believed in handshakes and loyalty? I was so focused on the damning text, so consumed by the horror of it, that I didn't hear the soft click at the office door. Alex? The voice was quiet, hoarse, but unmistakable. Not Benny, not security. I froze, the folder clutched in my hand like a live grenade. Slowly, dread turning my blood to ice, I turned. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the faint light from the corridor, was Arthur Henderson. He looked diminished. Frail in a hospital gown covered by a thin cardigan, leaning heavily on a walker. His face was ashen, etched with pain and exhaustion, but his eyes were sharp, clear, and fixed on me with an expression I couldn't read: confusion, suspicion, maybe a flicker of profound disappointment. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Panic, pure and blinding, seized me. He's supposed to be dying, in a coma. How is he here? Alex, he repeated, his voice stronger this time, though still weak. He took a shuffling step into the room, the walker's feet scraping on the floorboards. What are you doing? With my papers? I scrambled to my feet, knocking over a small stack of ledgers. They clattered to the floor, the sound impossibly loud in the silence. Mr. Henderson, Arthur, I... Words failed me. The lie died on my lips. What could I possibly say? Just admiring your fraudulent contract? Borrowing your desk? He saw the folder in my hand, saw the open drawer. His gaze hardened. Those are confidential. He took another step, his breathing labored. Viridian sent you? To take them? The accusation hung in the air. No, I mean, yes? No, I stammered, backing away instinctively towards the window. Mr. Henderson, please, let me explain. Explain? A dry, painful cough racked him. He leaned heavily on the walker, catching his breath. When he looked up, his eyes held a terrible clarity. Explain how you thought it was all right to steal from a dying man in his own office? His voice cracked on the last word. The shame was a physical blow. Hot tears welled up, blurring my vision. I didn't want to. The confession burst out of me, raw and desperate. My boss, Silas Thorne, he ordered me to. He said if you died, your son would find these clauses and sue Viridian. He said it would cost hundreds of jobs. He said he'd fire me. The excuses tumbled out, pathetic and self-serving even to my own ears. Arthur was silent for a long moment, just watching me, his chest rising and falling with effort. The disappointment in his eyes deepened, but it was mixed with something else. Pity. Understanding of the kind of pressure Silas could exert. Silas Thorne, he rasped, the name like a curse. Knew him. Knew his kind. He coughed again, a wet rattling sound that made me flinch. Those clauses, I never saw them. He gestured weakly towards the folder. He slipped them in. When I was distracted. After Martha, my wife, after her first stroke. His voice was thick with grief and betrayal. Trusted. The handshake. He took another shaky step forward. I instinctively held out the folder, offering it back like a peace offering. Here, Mr. Henderson, please, take it. I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have touched it. He didn't take it immediately. He looked at the folder, then at me, his gaze piercing. Why? He asked, the single word heavy with meaning. Why did you open it? If you were just stealing, why read? The question cut through my panic. Why had I read it? Because deep down, the cowardice hadn't been absolute. Because some shred of the person I used to be before Viridian ground me down couldn't just blindly obey? I needed to know, I whispered. To know how bad it was. A ghost of a sad smile touched his lips. Bad enough? He finally reached out a trembling hand and took the folder from me. His fingers brushed mine, cold, papery skin. You have a choice now, Alex. His voice was barely audible. Take this. To Silas. Tell him you failed. Or... He paused, gathering strength. Or take it to my lawyer. Tomorrow, when Michael gets here. He coughed again, a deep, painful sound that seemed to shake his whole frame. Show him what Viridian really is. He turned slowly, painfully towards the door. Go home, Alex, before I change my mind and call security. He didn't look back. He shuffled out, the walker scraping a slow, agonizing rhythm down the corridor, disappearing into the shadows. I stood there, Frozen, the empty space where he'd been feeling colder than the entire factory. The weight of the choice crashed down on me. Silas expected the folder gone. If I went back empty-handed, my career at Viridian was over. Probably my reputation in the industry, too. Silas wouldn't hesitate to paint me as incompetent, or worse, a liability who couldn't follow orders, blackball me. But taking it to Michael Henderson, exposing Viridian, exposing myself as the guy who broke in, Michael would likely still sue, but now I'd be the whistleblower and the trespasser. A messy public spectacle. My name in the papers. Potential legal jeopardy for me, even if I was coerced. I stumbled out of the factory, the rain, now a cold downpour soaking through my hoodie. I didn't care. I drove home on autopilot, the image of Arthur Henderson's frail figure, his disappointed eyes, seared into my mind. The next 24 hours were a blur of agonizing indecision. I called in sick to Viridian, unable to face Silas. I barely slept. Mr. Whiskers stared at me with wide, unblinking eyes, as if sensing the turmoil. I researched whistleblower protections, weak for private sector misconduct like this. I thought about the hundreds of jobs Silas mentioned, but were they worth this? Worth betraying a decent man on his deathbed? Michael Henderson arrived the next morning. I saw the news alert on my phone. Arthur Henderson passes peacefully surrounded by family. My heart sank. I was too late. Grief-stricken, I almost threw in the towel. Just lie low. Hope Silas forgot about me. But then I remembered Arthur's last words. Show him what Viridian really is. And the photo on his desk, and the fudge. I couldn't just disappear. That felt like another betrayal. So I did the scariest thing I've ever done. I copied everything. Scanned the damning clauses from the folder. I'd taken a quick surreptitious photo with my phone before Arthur took it back, a reflex not planned. I documented Silas's instructions, the time, the place, the mention of Benny, the threats. I wrote a detailed signed affidavit. Then, shaking like a leaf, I walked into the offices of Henderson Manufacturing the next day. Michael Henderson was there, red-eyed, looking 10 years older, surrounded by grim-faced lawyers. I asked to speak to him, alone. He looked at me like I was pawn scum. Viridian? Get out. Mr. Henderson, please, I pleaded, my voice trembling. I worked for Silas Thorne. I was involved. I have proof of what they did to your father. Suspicion warred with desperate hope in his eyes. He nodded curtly to a side office. 10 minutes later, after showing him the scans, reading my affidavit, explaining the coerced break-in, the suspicion melted into cold, hard fury, then a flicker of something else. Not gratitude, not yet, but recognition of a shared enemy, of a common victim. The fallout was seismic. Michael, armed with my evidence and Arthur's original folder, which miraculously Arthur had given to his lawyer before going back to the hospital that night, launched a scorched earth lawsuit. Not just for the fraudulent clauses, but for the attempted theft, the coercion, the systemic deception of legacy clients. The media had a field day. Viridian Dynamics accused of preying on dying client. Project manager blows whistle on corpse theft plot. Silas Thorne was fired within 48 hours, escorted out of the building by security, his granite facade finally cracked, replaced by sputtering rage and panic. Viridian stock plummeted. The legacy client retention division was dismantled. Multiple investigations were launched. Me? I wasn't charged. Michael's lawyers argued, successfully, that I was a coerced whistleblower, not a criminal. Viridian, desperate to contain the PR nightmare, cut me a quiet settlement and a non-disparagement agreement that, crucially, didn't gag me from telling my story anonymously. They just didn't want my name attached to the corpse theft angle. Too lurid. I'm unemployed, technically, but it's different now. The gray numbness is gone, replaced by a constant low thrum of anxiety, yes, but also something else. A strange lightness. A sense of having finally chosen a side. My own. Mr. Whiskers still judges me, but it feels different. Less like disdain, more like cautious approval. Maybe I'm just hoping. I sit here now typing this, not because I want fame, but because Silas Thorne isn't unique. He's just the sharp end of a system that grinds people down until they're willing to do the unthinkable for a little security, a little more pat for the cat. I almost became part of the machine that crushes people like Arthur Henderson. The fact that I didn't, that I chose the harder, scarier path, it doesn't make me a hero. It just means I'm still human, barely. So if you're out there, grinding away, told to do something that makes your stomach churn, that whispers this is wrong in the quiet moments, remember Arthur Henderson. Remember the weight of a dying man's trust. Remember that the cost of keeping your head down might be your soul. And sometimes, the most terrifying thing isn't losing your job. It's realizing you've already lost yourself. I almost stole a corpse's paperwork, and the fact that I didn't. That's the only thing that keeps me from feeling like a ghost myself. Now, if you'll excuse me, Mr. Whiskers' premium organic salmon pate isn't going to pay for itself. Some compromises, it turns out, are still worth making. Just maybe not with your conscience.